When you think of Disney parks, you think of a world of imagination that exceeds your wildest dreams, that truly lets you leave the world of today and step into the world of yesterday, tomorrow, and fantasy. You think of the castle and its bright colors, the idyllic scenery, the fantastical architecture, and the true removal from your real life and all of its difficulties. That's why Walt Disney World was specifically built with the idea of the Disney bubble in mind. When you're in the Disney bubble, you're living in the fantasy of the parks with no connection or need from the outside world. Your housing is Disney. Your food is Disney. Your shopping is Disney. Your entertainment is Disney. And even your transportation is Disney. Heck, you can't even watch a non-Disney sanctioned television channel in your hotel room. There's a famous story about the creation of Disneyland in which Walt insists that the park doesn't sell newspapers so that the suspension of reality can be truly encompassing when you're a guest there. While newspapers are a little more of a rarity these days, it was unheard of back then for such a center for gathering to not carry the news. And yet, he insisted, impressing upon the importance that guests be disconnected while in this fantastical world. Why then did Walt also insist on constructing a building with a big sign calling it a newsstand? The key to a good fantastical story is that it's based in some level of reality. If a fantasy is too off the wall, then the audience will be struck by the oddity and feel separated from it. If a fantasy, however, is somewhat familiar, the audience will have a basis at which they can see themselves present in that world. Sure, flying elephants aren't logically possible, but a circus is a commonly attended attraction, and elephants do have large ears. So the fantasy of Dumbo the flying elephant is able to be easily explained and expanded upon by the audience's minds. So while it may be odd to associate a Disney theme park with a subject so unquestioningly real and tangible, Disney has proven themselves to have a masterful talent at taking the real and making it unreal. But should something so serious and foundational for everyday life be transformed into a fantasy? Creating an idealized version of a turn-of-the-century American town may be one thing, but is creating an appealing version of a battlefield disrespectful? When you see the name Disney's America in the title of this video, there are a couple of directions in which your brain might decide to go. You might think, yeah, Disney, the corporate giant, wants to own all of America. They basically do now. Or similarly, Walt was dreaming of being the god king of his own futuristic colony in Progress City. It would make sense that he would want to rule a country. Or a person who visits the parks often might think, cool, I love Main Street USA. The idea of Disney's America prompts both controversial and optimistic trains of thought, all valid in their own right. And that is exactly why the project was so fraught with difficulty in its development. Disney's America was intended to be a theme park homage to all of the greatest things about America: independence, freedom, the pursuit of happiness, innovation, progress, and the unbreakable American spirit. While some of those things are up for debate in modern American politics, let's drink the propaganda Kool-Aid for a minute here to truly get in the mindset that would be required to be a true Disney adult for this park. Imagine amber waves of grain, a statue of some brave military guys holding up a flag, fireworks in red, white, and blue, tea flooding the Boston Harbor, a man on the moon, a Big Mac, supersized, so large that it could feed a family of 4, even if you're going to eat it on your own. Just keep telling yourself that you're the best country in the world, and that if you keep working at your endless 9-to-5 job for all of eternity, you'll definitely win the lottery one day and become richer than Jeff Bezos. This is the American dream fantasy that you need to be immersed in to understand the purpose of Disney's America. Was Walt himself, perhaps, using these grandiose thoughts about the country as a form of escapism from the political discord of his time? These are the thoughts that keep me up at night on the 4th of July of every year. All jokes aside, you're probably wondering what in the world Disney's America was that it required this long of an introduction. Well, it's kind of exactly what the name says, but I'll add a couple of words to the name to add some more clarity. Disney's idealized edutainment theme park version of America. When it was announced to the public on November 11th, 1993, Disney's America was intended to be the Walt Disney Company's next theme park venture following the Euro Disney disaster, which, don't worry, we'll be circling back to later. Imagine Magic Kingdom, except it's only Main Street USA, Frontierland, and Liberty Square. but remove the Haunted Mansion and replace it with the American Adventure from Epcot's America Pavilion. Located in Haymarket, Virginia, Disney's America was supposed to be a sort of role-playing adventure into various important points in American history, where guests would be fully immersed into real battles, treks, voyages, and more via various different types of attractions. In theory, the idea is really cool. I personally had difficulty staying awake in history class, listening to facts and dates repeated at me in uninterested voices. So something interactive like this really would have made the subject digestible for me and many other school-aged guests. Instead of just watching reenacting troops carry out famous battles or inhabit a colonial town, you would get to be in the battlefield yourself. And there really is something to the idea of experience being the best teacher. Sometimes the important lessons we could glean from history feel so far away, as though they are just another fantasy story. With how quickly the modern world has evolved, life of the past feels further away than ever. Perhaps some immersion would help us to understand and revere the struggles of those who came before us, so that we can take their lessons forward into the future. Michael Eisner, the CEO of Disney at the time, was of the same thought, that the immersive edutainment that Disney parks strived to create would be a unique tool to help both American and international guests take a personal interest in a subject that affects all of our daily lives. And of course, he was maybe looking at the potential capitalistic gain of opening another profitable Disney theme park. But we're still in the positive section of the video, so stick with me. Overall, Disney's America was an oddly perfect project for Disney to tackle, rooted in Walt's belief in educational entertainment and desire to spread American patriotism while still pushing the boundaries on themed entertainment. Mirroring Disney Parks' tradition, you would start your visit to Disney's America in Crossroads, USA, by walking underneath the tracks of a steam locomotive into a quaint pre-Civil War era American village. At the end of this section, you would find yourself in a layout similar to Magic Kingdom. However, instead of a castle, a large lake called Freedom Bay would greet you with replicas of Civil War era battleships sailing around it. Going clockwise through the lands around the park, you would walk through the following lands. First, Enterprise, a land dedicated to the Industrial Revolution, featuring exhibits from American industry partners, as well as the park's premier roller coaster. Second, you'd walk through We the People, a restaurant district representing Ellis Island and exploring the experience of real American immigrants and their cultures. After crossing the railroad tracks, you'd find yourself outside the typical Disney park's berm and on the land of Victory Field, an airfield designed to replicate those of the two world wars, while showing off various important aircrafts throughout the time. Victory Field would have housed what would probably have been the coolest part of Disney's America, the world's first dueling coaster. For those unfamiliar, a dueling coaster is when a coaster has two tracks that run simultaneously and get precariously close to each other at times during the ride, to give the illusion of the ride vehicles, well, dueling each other. In this case, the plan was that one track would have vehicles themed to an American fighter jet, and the other would have German World War II fighter planes. Super cool and educational, with no potential for controversy at all, right? After shooting down an enemy plane, you'll cross back over the train tracks and into State Fair, a land inspired by American pastimes. Referencing Coney Island, this land was to house standard fare type rides like a wooden roller coaster and Ferris wheel. Leaving State Fair takes you into a traditional American family farmland, aptly called Family Farm. This land would be the most like the typical historical reenactments located at American historical sites, with a fully functioning farm intended to show off the various steps in the food preparation process. If you're one of the people who refuse to ride the Davy Crockett Explorer canoes in any Disney park because it's too much manual labor for my vacation day, what sane person would want to row a boat in the 100-degree sun with no shade for fun? Then you likely would have avoided this land out of similar principle. Once you finished up your farm chores, you would head back to the waterfront to see Civil War Fortland, or whatever they would have actually ended up calling it. I really hope some of these names weren't going to be final. It really should be more like Civil War Fort, Galaxy's Edge, or something more savvy with search engine optimization or whatever. But we're actually going to skip this land for now and come back to it later. I know. That's not optimal park planning with all of the backtracking we'll have to do across the lake, but you'll see why later. Following the little outlet from Freedom Bay, you'd find yourself inside a beautifully themed native village called Native America, which would house crafting activities inspired by the local native tribes and a rafting ride inspired by Lewis and Clark's famous expeditions that I just had to Google because, again, I really needed some help in history class. If you want to know more about them, just know that it's kinda like the game Oregon Trail. Kinda. Finally, the last land before you would make it back to the entrance was President's Square. This land would have been the most familiar to guests, as it was intended to essentially be a mesh of the America Pavilion in Epcot and Liberty Square in Magic Kingdom that would contain each land's America-themed animatronic show. After thoroughly enjoying each of these lands and their attractions throughout a very busy day, the sun is finally setting and it's time to make our way over to stake out a spot for Disney's America's Grand Nighttime Spectacular. In traditional Disney fashion, you'll need to pause the video here and go sit on a very uncomfortable cement sidewalk for about 3 hours to truly get the experience. Lucky for you though, I'm too nice to add an overlay of a child being held up to block your view. I'll be waiting for you when you get back. And pause now. Has it been 3 hours yet? Yes? Perfect. I appreciate your honesty. Civil War Fort, the last and probably the most controversial land of Disney's America, was planned to be home to a large Civil War-era fort and battleground intended for guest participant recreations of notable Civil War battles. Most notably, though, this land would house the park's nighttime spectacular. Instead of an emotional fireworks show filled with clips of timeless Disney classics or yet another rendition of Fantasmic, this park's spectacular would be, drumroll please, a battle between two Civil War ships. Like, with the rest of the park, your immediate reaction was probably somewhere between, whoa, cool history thing, and whoa, that's awkward. But yes, you did indeed hear me right. The emotional and uplifting show that would be your last impression of the park to take home with you and remember from your childhood forever with awe and wonder was supposed to be a flashy show that tackled slavery. If you have seen the American Adventure in Epcot, or the Hall of Presidents in Magic Kingdom, or Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln in Disneyland, you're likely aware of the hit Disney song, Two Brothers, a morose song about the tale of two brothers, one who loved slavery and one who opposed it, who fought each other during the war. Since this song seemed to be a Disney American historical classic, they like to use it over and over and over again. You can just imagine guests being sung to about a white supremacist being shot by a cannonball as they watch two battleships duke it out, and then having to drive home for 3 hours in a cramped car filled with awkward silence. And with that painful image, we're led directly into the social conflict that caused the very quick demise of these very cringe-worthy theme park plans. The entirety of the situation can be summed up by an extremely inappropriate and cringe-worthy quote from the project announcement presentation that could only have been said by a corporate executive who is wildly out of touch with reality and human emotion. We want to make you a Civil War soldier. We want to make you feel what it was like to be a slave or what it was like to escape through the Underground Railroad. And honestly, I could have ended the video right here, having said enough of a valid reason to shut the project down. But Disney still tried to claim after this that they were responsible enough to handle complex historical topics. I still have to keep telling the story. So, buckle in for another 1,000 or so words. Disney had very quickly made some very important enemies for their project. Generally, historians and historical societies disapproved of the project due to a couple of main factors. First, they felt that putting a theme park so close to an actual battlefield was a disgrace to all of those who fought and died there. Virginia is a state that housed many historical events, and while it may seem like an ideal location for a historically based attraction because you'd be so close to all of the real-life locations, the problem is that you're adding modern amusement to lands that should be revered for their relevance and sacrifice. Second, historians and the public alike were concerned about an entertainment company tackling such divisive and impactful subjects like war and slavery. While immersion is great in theory, it would also serve to minimize the experience of actual slaves and soldiers, as nothing that would be appropriate to inflict upon theme park guests could truly match the levels of suffering these people experienced, thus cheapening their experience in the eyes of history. If you're interested in seeing an actual glimpse into the general public's opinion of Disney's America, check out the song Disney's America by Graham Parker. While the song didn't gain huge popularity on the charts, it was considered to be a valid critique of capitalism and its surreal impacts on nature and society as a whole. While Eisner did attempt to court the naysayers for a while, his efforts were ultimately unsuccessful, and to probably no one's surprise. The Civil War Fort section of Disney's America was the first portion to kick the bucket, and while this did resolve the loudest complaints about minimizing the impact that slavery had on Americans, the snowball kept on rolling and collecting more and more concerns about Disney's ability to handle any other important historical topic with the correct level of nuance. As Eisner's next attempt to quell the complaints of the masses, he announced that Disney would be open to choosing a new location for the theme park, but then the internal planning difficulties began rolling in. During this same time period, the newly built Euro Disney, now known as Disneyland Paris, had opened to what could essentially be called complete failure. Now, Disney's America had both cultural opponents and a $900 million failed theme park looming over its head. Disney's America itself was also showing itself to be a growing cost. Between construction costs ballooning as the project went further into development, and regional weather causing experts to determine that Disney's America would have to close to guests for 4 months out of the year, thus significantly lengthening the amount of time that it would take for the park to make back its initial budget. The project seemed to be becoming way too expensive to be able to open to a lukewarm and potentially oppositional audience. It was only after these calculations and less than a year after the initial announcement that Eisner decided to finally throw in the towel and cancel Disney's America. Or did he? While Disney's America has been considered canceled since September 1994, Eisner's last words on the project were actually that it has been paused, as fighting opposition had cost them too much of their budget that they needed to spend to create the authentic experience that the opposition wanted of them. So technically, we could still see Disney's America pop up one day. If it ever does, remember that you heard it here first, folks. Actually, there are a couple of places that do exist in modern Disney parks at which you can see remnants of Disney's America. Obviously, you can go experience the American Adventure at Epcot and the Hall of Presidents in Magic Kingdom, but there are some lesser-known pieces floating around out there. Around the same time as the pause of Disney's America, another batch of projects over in California were also canceled. Westcott, a West Coast version of Epcot with the same attractions and theming, and Port Disney, an oceanside nautical-themed park/mall area. These two were also victims of budget slashes due to the massive losses at Euro Disney, and were later consolidated along with Disney's America into one park that would become the second gate at the Disneyland Resort, Disney California Adventure. Quite a few of the concepts from Disney's America actually made it into Disney California Adventure in a somewhat repurposed, dehistorified way that made them relevant to the state of California. Most notable is the Paradise Pier, now known as Pixar Pier, and while it was constructed to resemble Santa Monica Pier and the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, the initial concepts were lifted from the Coney Island-inspired State Fair land. Condor Flats, now known as the Grizzly Peak Airfield, was born from the concepts from the Victory Field land. This is most apparent inside the Soarin' attraction with its showcase of historical planes and pilots, though it is a shame that we lost the dueling coaster with the transition. Family Farm inspired the Bountiful Valley Farms land that served as an educational look at farm production, though it has since been torn down and replaced with A Bug's Land and later Avengers Campus. Finally, the Lewis and Clark rafting adventure from Native Village was transformed into the Grizzly River Run attraction. So the next time you go to any of these locations in Disney California Adventure, you can now impress your friends with some cool trivia to assert your dominance as the alpha Disney adult. And that's the legacy of Disney's America. Potentially one of the most controversial projects that Disney has canceled to date. What's your opinion on an entertainment company educating the general public on controversial topics? Do you love Disney's edutainment attractions or wish your theme parks only had fantastical fun? Would you have voted for Walt Disney as president? So many questions come up from this video. And I'd love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments. Who knows? Maybe you'll play a part in taking down the next cringe-worthy Disney project.